Welcome back to another GTN Coaches Corner. I am back. I am your coach this week. You can send us in any questions you like, triathlon related, obviously, using the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Leave them in the comment section below this video or below any video. And we are going to get cracking here. First one from Sean Azopardi. I'm a runner and want to start training for triathlon. Well, hey. Awesome. What first bike should I buy? If I want to buy one bike, should I go for a tri bike immediately? We get this question a lot, and actually I think we answered this quite recently. I guess the first question is, what are your long-term goals? Are you really committed to this and feel like you are going to fall in love with triathlon from the off? In which case, well, if you want to and you can extend your budget to, then sure, go for a triathlon bike. On the most part though, I would probably suggest to most people opt for the road bike initially, because actually it's probably the most socially enjoyable bike and probably the most diverse bike. So what I mean by that is you'll be able to go and join your local cycling club for a group ride. You will feel more comfortable. The handling is obviously a little bit better on a road bike, and generally just have a little bit more time, a little bit more fun and enjoyment on that. And you can upgrade it. You can put aero bars onto it so you can make it slightly more aerodynamic and have some enjoyment out of it in a triathlon too. And with time, maybe in 2 or 3 years, then maybe the time that you might want to sell that road bike, buy a triathlon bike, or buy a triathlon bike as well. You know how it goes, N+1. Anyway, moving on. Next one from S. Hi, said, hi GTN, I am 12. Well, hello. I currently swim 5 times a week with my club. How much should I be running and cycling? Obviously, focusing on swimming at 12 years of age is brilliant. And actually, I would say continue doing that, even though you are interested in picking up triathlon, because actually it's a great way of building up your fitness, your cardiovascular endurance without putting too much stress through your body. Obviously, cycling and running, there's a little bit more impact with that. That said, cycling is brilliant. Obviously, you're not pounding sort of through your lower limb muscles as much as you are in running, and it could be a good opportunity at this sort of age to work on your skills. So really honing in those skills, working on the cornering, the sort of skills that a lot of older athletes don't do, because they enter into triathlon at an older age and they are too ashamed or embarrassed to kind of take that step back and work on their skills, their cornering and whatnot. So now is the time to really hone in on that, and you will reap the rewards by doing that. With the running, obviously do be cautious. As I've alluded to, this is the one that you're going to feel the most impact through those lower limbs and could be the most damaging. So you want to really gradually build this up, particularly at your age of 12 years old. And again, this is like, start out, you could do some walk jogs, or actually just treat it as going out for a walk with a couple of little jogs in it. You can start just building up just 5, 10, 12 minute jogs. So really short. And I honestly would suggest just 1 or 2 runs a week initially. But fantastic that you're interested in getting into triathlon. I would probably suggest also linking up with a local triathlon club if you can, because there are some out there and they'll be able to advise you and help you individually on that progress. But yeah, as I say, brilliant and welcome to the sport. Next one, interesting username, Predator Poachers Archive. So I've come back to running again last October after falling in love with it in the military years ago. And I'm listening to you say, run 3 times a week, and I'm confused because in the army I ran 5 miles daily with only 1 day off. So I continue to do this in my civilian life. So did the army steer me the wrong way, or were we just cramming in runs because we were going to war? Also, I just learned literally yesterday about static versus dynamic stretching, which the army did not teach us. I just hate doing anything incorrectly, especially something that I love so much and gives me so much motivation. I can understand that, that's fair enough. So yeah, thanks for sending your question. Obviously there's no set amount on how many times you should run per week, where you may have heard us talking about 3 runs per week. It may have just been an example, or we're advising on perhaps if you're trying to train for an Ironman in 10 hours a week, whatever it may be. But obviously you can do as many or as little as you like. And obviously if you've built up the running with time, you may be able to do more. And some people, pure runners, as it sounds like you were mostly just doing running during the army, probably can get away with doing more runs. The important bit though is that you are factoring in the recovery and the rest. And obviously you were in the army, you were having that 1 day off per week, which is brilliant. But another reason we do suggest something like 3 runs per week is that we're taking into account the fact that you're trying to fit swimming training in with that, biking in with that, work, life, and just taking into account the amount of energy available as well. Because obviously if you are trying to knock out 5 runs per week, as well as all of this going on, chances are you are going to feel pretty flat for some of those runs and maybe not reap the rewards that you're hoping from that. So actually by doing, say, 3 runs along with the other training, you can hit those workouts well and get good quality out of them. And actually specifically you might be able to say one is just a nice easy run or a speed run, another one is a tempo run, another one is a nice long steady run. In terms of the static versus dynamic stretching, good question. In fact, I think we probably need to do a video on that. Dynamic stretches work well as part of a warm-up because they actually start to open up joints and get some of the muscles warm whilst actually getting a light stretch on. You do want to be cautious with static stretching. That's not to say you can't do them, but you should do them once you are very well warmed up, perhaps even at the end of a run session, for example. But definitely don't start doing static stretches before a run when you are cold, which is something we see a lot of people doing. It's a big no. Right, next question. JD Sinky HD. Hi GTN, love the vid. I have 2 half marathon events coming up with 3 weeks in between the races, but I intend to be at my peak fitness for the first event. Do you have any advice for what sort of sessions I should aim to do in between the 2 events? Really good question, actually. First thing here is you want to prioritize recovery, obviously. One of the things a lot of people fall into the trap of doing is doing that first half marathon or whatever, first event, and focusing so much on the next one is that they don't take enough recovery or adequate recovery and actually end up regretting that just as they're about to go into that next event and wish they'd taken some. So make sure you prioritize that recovery immediately after the event. That means a good few days, very easy. You may even want to take a full day off. Essentially listen to your body because everyone is different here, and that is very important. Don't just do what someone else is doing. Listen to your body, make sure you're recovered, and then you can go into doing some sharper sessions, something that's going to sort of get you fired up and get those cylinders firing ahead of the next event. You basically want to avoid going quite flat, and I guess quite lethargic is probably the best word for that. Now in terms of doing numerous events in quick succession and peaking for one event versus another, the fact that you are trying to peak for the first event is actually really good. Now you're only doing 2 events, but in some cases people are trying to do multiple events a couple of weeks apart from each other for a sustained period of time. And actually by doing that, it's very hard to get good quality blocks of training in, and you could run the risk of losing fitness over the course of that time or that period. Now, you're probably not going to lose fitness over the course of a few weeks, but it's great that you are doing that first event. You can really target that and hit that one with the ideal perfect prep. And then, as I say, try and tick over for the next one. So yeah, good stuff. Next question is quite a detailed one from Millie. I've been training for my June 70.3 for about 6 months now, and I'm looking to increase my power and speed on the bike. I recently had an ex-pro cyclist mate of mine criticize me for spending too much time grinding away in the big ring. I've heard many people, including this ex-pro, swear by the benefits of spending most of their time training in the little ring and saving the big ring for race day. Are you able to provide more clarity on this, the benefits of spending time in the little ring, if any, big ring versus little ring, etc, etc. They go on to say actually, my legs are definitely less fatigued than the small ring, but my heart rate peaks and spikes much earlier because of the high RPM. Now first off, I just want to get rid of this whole stigma around big ring versus small ring. I understand some people think that they need to stay in the big ring all the time to increase their power, be strong, and that's what triathletes do. And you're not going to get those benefits from being in the small ring. Forget that. If you need to use the small ring, use the small ring. If you need to use the big ring, use the big ring. In fact, it will be far better for your overall pedaling efficiency. And that is something that we see a lot of, dare I say it, triathletes who stay in the big ring too much. They end up with rather inefficient pedaling technique. And we've actually got a video on the channel already where we look at overgearing and also talk about some of the athletes that typically have quite a low cadence with that and how it changes in terms of how it works the body. So when we stay in a large gear or overgear, it tends to work the muscles as you have reported, and then when you go into the small ring, it tends to work or tax the cardiovascular system more, which is why you have seen a spike in your heart rate, and partly due to the fact that you aren't conditioned or used to doing that. Now, for anyone else watching this, I would just advise trying out different cadences and find out what's ideal for you. If you've got an overly low cadence or an overly high cadence, perhaps try coming somewhere in between and starting to try and bring that not towards a norm, but back in towards that center, and just see what works for you and trying to find that ideal and more efficient technique. As I say, check out that video because we go into a lot of information and depth there. Now finally, from KD, they said how to calculate lactate threshold on the track and then define goals. I'm assuming when you say track, you're talking about an athletics track, so you're talking about running. First off, don't need to use an athletics track, you can run wherever you like to calculate lactate thresholds. Now lactate threshold is the best pace that you can sustain, or best intensity that you can sustain over the course of an hour, roughly speaking, but it's a good ballpark guide for us when we're trying to calculate this outside of a science lab. So for running, what I have often used in the past is trying to run a best effort over the course of 30 minutes solo. And then what you do is you take your average pace from the final 20 minutes of that 30-minute effort and your average heart rate. And that is your threshold pace, your threshold heart rate. The reason why we only use 30 minutes, and that equates to your best 60 minutes, is that because you're doing it solo and probably in the midst of all your training, that probably equates to your best effort if you are running alongside other people in a race scenario. So don't go starting trying to do this and think, oh, I'll do it at a local 10K, it makes sense, you'll save some time. Do it on your own, do it solo, and there we go, lactate threshold. Thanks ever so much everyone for all your questions. Please keep them coming in using that hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Leave them below this video or below any other video. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe.